Yes, excellent. Greetings from Mombasa. My comments today are going to look at pre this situation that we find ourselves, as well as now. So for the last 8 months, I've been taking a deep dive into this journey of being a teacher coach. For those who aren't familiar with the role, put very simply, the role is about bringing evidence-based practices into the classroom by working with teachers and school leaders. And there are teacher coaches working around the world in different contexts, but the most teacher coaches are working in the North American context. So there's quite a bit of literature about how teacher coaches are operating in North America. And I found one meta-analysis about the impact of having a teacher coach or a teacher program within schools. And what you find is that instructional outcomes for teachers improve, but there can be just modest improvements in student learning. And but on closer inspection, through this meta-analysis, researchers from Harvard and Brown found, with the support of a teacher coach, found it quite useful. And they've also identified some key aspects of programs that make for effective teacher coaching programs. But as we all know, just taking a strategy from one place doesn't always transfer well into another. So what does this mean for our continent, or for the African continent specifically? There is a little bit of literature out there. There are teacher coaches working on the continent in many different type of scenarios, from non-formal schools settings to small schools to private schools, and even within the government systems. So recently, in last year, in July 2019, quite a few of these organizations got together to discuss their findings about teacher coaching programs and how they were working. And they found that they actually had quite a few barriers to implementation. Sometimes it's difficult to implement teacher coaching to scale because it's labor intensive. Coaches can face resistance from teachers who are unwilling to receive feedback. There's some fear that coaching is a form of surveillance. And many institutions, because often the coaches come from organizations and then join and work with schools, there's a sort of misunderstanding or misalignment of what the goals are. But there are also some successes. There's been a very big study in Kenya looking at teacher coaching and how that can improve literacy strategies in Kenyan public and non-formal settings. So the more teacher coaches they have found in their early findings that they have seen a positive impact in the quality of instruction happening within those schools. So bringing it down to my experience on the continent has really started in 2015 when I moved to Tanzania, and I worked as a MYP coordinator, middle years program coordinator. So that's one of the IB programs. And more recently in August, when I moved to Kenya and working as a teacher coach. So as a coordinator, as a program coordinator, my experience to working with teachers and helping improve the quality of instruction was really about 3 strategies. I worked with new teachers who were coming into the school, who might be new to teaching, to help them settle in and develop their pedagogies. Then I worked with teachers who found themselves requiring some sort of performance management interventions. And finally, and most excitingly, we did organize an outreach program at that school, whereby we invited teachers from our wider community to come to our international school and had an exchange of ideas, shared the IB programs with them, shared inquiry-based teaching, all those sorts of ideas. And after a weekend of PD, we had 10 weeks of 1 weekly session a week, choosing some interns who stayed on at our school. And then many of them went on to find jobs, so it was very successful. And going and visiting them in their context, we could see changes, for example, very traditional, sitting in rows, to actually doing role plays. So changes in teaching strategies and methods. But now I find myself in a new place, a new experience, and a new context. I find myself at the Aga Khan Academies. So what attracted me firstly was the mission and vision of the academies. They aspire to develop future leaders with the skills and knowledge to support development in their societies. And the idea is very much to have homegrown leaders. Similarly, at the academies, the focus is on having homegrown educators. And one of my favorite quotes is this, where the Aga Khan says that one of his major goals is to sort of promote the profession of teaching. Another was beyond the IB offer, they have their own strands which they want to inculcate in all of their students, which are these 5 strands of ethics, pluralism, and understanding of cultures, and understanding of economics and for development, and governance and civil society. So what are they doing to make good on their promise for developing the teaching profession on the continent? Well, they have a teacher program that's recognized by the IB and the University of British Columbia. They have an outreach program to work with local head teachers at local schools. They have a teacher exchange between teachers and visiting the various different academies, and teacher coaches for departments, of which I'm one. So I'm the humanities teacher coach. As for the student body, it's also quite diverse. Comes from usually the host country and surrounding countries. There is also a talent identification program whereby a significant proportion, I think up to half the students, have some sort of financial aid, and the talent ID students have up to or over 100% financial support. So in this situation, what is my role? So as an instructional coach, as I've already mentioned, it's about bringing those evidence-based practices into the classroom, and currently into the virtual classroom, and working with teachers and other school leaders to do this. The really important things about my job is that it's not linked to the appraisal system. It's not about creating more work. It's about working smarter and improving practice. It's about differentiated professional development, really targeting the needs of teachers and specific questions that they have. It's about making sustainable changes. So whatever we discover that works in our context, to make sure that we embed it systemically and it becomes sustainable. And it's also about sharing good practice across the network, because the academies is a network of schools. So what does this really look like for me as the humanities coach sitting here? Largely, I've spent quite a bit of time working in my home academy. I'm based in Kenya, working with the heads of department, with the coordinator, doing professional development sessions with teachers, and working virtually as well, and visiting the academies in Mozambique, and working as well with the academy in India. So these are some of the things that I've been able to do. Look at curriculum alignment between the schools, sharing best practice, linking up with other network entities like the Aga Khan Museum for virtual tours, and the Aga Khan Trust for Culture to create resources which are based on the needs of our continent. But what I wanted to, I've whizzed through my slides because the focus, I think, has been very much what can a teacher coach do now in these times. So my role in these days has been to support the planning of online lessons, do online lesson observations, cover lessons where teachers have issues on connectivity. And so I really appreciated Jonathan's presentation. What we found, and the data is still not 100% in, I think we need to continually assess this through registration during lessons and things like that, that not 100% of our students are able to connect. And I think what this situation really has brought to the fore is the digital divide in resources between students. We have students who are very well resourced and well able to participate, and then others who have mobile technology using bundles and hotspots and things like that to make things work. So the challenge really is, and to sort of develop strategies in which we can make sure we reach every student and engage them and look after their well-being. So the lessons learnt during this 8 months has been that we can use video coaching as quite an effective strategy, and that can be done in the face-to-face or virtually, working with heads of department and coordinators to put out these evidence-based strategies that work, and making links with the network, within the network. But there are some enduring challenges and tensions as well. You know, this is a new role, and I think we're at a point where we need to refine our model, and we realize that success hinges on the relationship a teacher coach is able to build, their credibility, their acceptance, and the institutional culture and support that's happening, but also being able to measure success. Now, I on purpose sort of whizzed through my slides because I'm really keen to hear all the multiple people who have logged on and are here. So those are my thoughts.